To start this speech off, I'd like you to close your eyes and just imagine. For those of you NBA fans out here, or just basketball fans in general, I'd like you to imagine LeBron James, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, especially this generation. He's so entertaining to watch and explosive on the court. It'd be fun to watch him play against other teams that he wouldn't normally play against unless he got to the finals. So if you're an Eastern Conference team, you wouldn't play a Western Conference team in the playoffs until the very finals. And usually, at least recently, it's been the same teams. The past 4 years, it has only been the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference going off against the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference. Those are the only teams to make it to the finals. But I think it'd be way more interesting to see Western and Eastern Conference teams facing off in the first round, regardless of their location or geographical attributes. So let's start exploring by what the current policy is. The current seeding is based off of Western and Eastern conferences, and the top 8 teams from each conference make the playoffs. It just goes straight by their overall record, not by play in the conference. That doesn't actually go into effect unless it's a tiebreaker. According to Wikipedia and the NBA's policy on their website, the seeds are based off of the 1 through 8 between each conference. And for the matchups, the top seed plays the 8th seed. The 4th plays the 5th. The 2nd plays the 7th. And the 3rd plays the 6th in each conference. As soon as you have the seeding, they battle in the first round. Then the next 2 rounds are still in the conference, which then turns into the 4th and final round, which is just called the NBA Finals. So obviously with this, if this was changed to a 1 through 16 playoff seeding, they would have to take out the Western and Eastern Conference Championship, which is technically the semifinals. They'd have to take that out completely, which I don't believe it would be a bad thing at all, because a lot of teams their goal is not to make the conference finals, it's to make the finals, or it's a bust season, and they failed, according to their terms. But most recently, in 2015, they did change the playoff format just slightly. So obviously there's conferences, Western and Eastern. They have divisions, 4 divisions in each conference. Now, how it was before the 2015 season is that the 4 division winners they were guaranteed a spot, but that's not the case anymore. It doesn't matter if you win the conference, or if you win the division, because it's just based on the conference and the total overall record. So as soon as we look at that, now we can move on to Adam Silver, who's the commissioner of the NBA. We can look at what can be done. Now, it's been brought to many different news sources and sports websites and shows that a 1 through 16 seeding would be best, because it would allow the best teams to face off in the finals, where, according to a lot of fans last year, the Houston Rockets were the number 1 seed in the West, and the Warriors were the number 2 seed. They battled in the Western Conference Finals, and that was said to be the real NBA Finals, which took it to 7 games in the best of 7 series, of course. Then, as soon as the Golden State Warriors won, they went on to face the Cleveland Cavaliers, which is still the 4th time in a row, and they swept them 4-0. That doesn't match up to an exciting, thrilling basketball series, because it wasn't close. The games were not... It didn't feel like the Cleveland Cavaliers were actually in the series. Even though Adam Silver says he believes that the NBA is not ready for the 1 through 16 seeding, he is still looking at a possibility for it, for a future and changing of the schedules. So what is said to possibly happen if they did a 1 through 16 seeding is that they would have to lessen the games during the regular season, which, if in case you don't know this, the NBA teams play 82 games in the regular season, which is a lot. It's only second to baseball in the four major sports in America, but it still would not be bad to lower it down to 70 or even down to maybe 60 games or any number in between that, just because you're getting a little bit more travel time in the playoffs, which gives players more rest and prevents injuries. But that's a conversation for another day. Lastly, we can look at what the playoff format would look like. So there was, according to usatoday.com, according to the website, there would be 5 games out of the 8 playoff games or series, I guess, as you would call them. There would be 5 games or series that would be playing a team in another conference, which that's 5 new series that you have never seen before, at least for the start of this change, if it were to happen. The Denver Nuggets would have made the playoffs, which is a Western Conference team, and the Washington Wizards would have missed them. This does kind of create an imbalance because the Eastern Conference would only have 7 teams and the Western would have 9 teams. But frankly, if they're not good enough to make the playoffs out of 16 teams, I don't believe they should be in the playoffs in the first place. This also speaks to how a lot of fans and sports analysts believe the Western Conference is so superior to the Eastern Conference by claiming that the top 3 or 4 teams in the Western Conference are all better than any team in the East, which that's a big imbalance, and it's not what you'd want to see for a finals match if there are 4 teams on the West that can beat the East. Lastly, we can look at the poll that USA Today had on their website. Nearly 65% of voters would prefer the new format because it would spice it up, it would be more entertaining, and it would prevent teams playing in the first or second round that would possibly be a finals game. So I think this would be very new and exciting, and it would definitely help new viewers get into the games because it'd be a lot closer matched once it gets to maybe the second, third rounds in the playoffs. But it would also just create new rivalries and change up their game plans for teams because they know that they're not going to be playing the same teams every year. They have a chance of playing any team in the league instead of just the same 15 teams in their conference or 14 other teams in their conference. So overall, I think this would be a fantastic change, and I hope you agree.